Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Noom.
I've tried a lot of things to improve my relationship with food. And often when we try and get healthier, we think of what we can't have instead of what we can. And what I have found is that Noom helps me not take on the whole mountain of wellness at once. I start with where I am. And with 10 minutes a day and logging my food and being in touch with my Noom counselor, I've really started on a path towards better health and a better understanding of why I eat the way that I do. A healthier life isn't about just sticking to strict rules. It means having more knowledge. Noom uses cognitive behavioral therapy approaches to focus on why instead of what can change our relationship with food. And everybody's journey looks different. Noom customizes a program based on your personal goals. That's what they've done for me. 80% of Noom users finish the program. Over 60% have stuck with their goals for at least a year. It's very inspiring. I find that with Noom, taking care of my health is empowering. It's not stress-inducing. I don't fear ruining my whole day if I have a meal that isn't what I thought it should be. With 10 minutes a day, Noom fits into my life on my terms. I love it.
Start building healthier habits for long-term results. Sign up for your trial at noom.com/breakdown. That's NOOM.com/breakdown.
I hope more than anything, if there's an echo of my existence in this world at all, it's to let somebody know that, yeah, you're here. We're both like this. And, we can help each other. Like, check this out, is to remind somebody that they're not alone in this.
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik, and welcome to my Breakdown. This is the place where we break things down so that you don't have to.
It's Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you, because she knows a thing or two. And now she's gonna break down. It's a breakdown. She's gonna break it down.
It's going to be a good episode today.
We also break things down so people can learn. And I'm also jumping my intro again.
Here is my frustrating mess, Jonathan Cohen.
Hi, Mayim. Hi, everyone.
And that's a deep cut. Do you know what that reference is?
I don't.
Do you know what else is a frustrating mess? Manic depression.
Oh.
That is a Jimi Hendrix quote. And that relates to what we're going to be talking about today. We have a guest today, and his name is Anthony Green. And Anthony Green is the lead singer of Circa Survive, Saosin, I think I pronounced it right, and The Sound of Animals Fighting. He also has a solo career as a musician. He's released 5 full-length albums under his own name, and in 2020 he released his first collection of children's music. I love when grown-up musicians do things for children. And it's called Let's Start a Band, which is really cute. He has also collaborated with some pretty awesome artists, and he has 4 children, which I think is an amazing part of his bio. We're going to be welcoming Anthony in a minute, but first, Jonathan, do you have anything you'd like to say before we get started?
Should let people know that there's a new MBB Instagram page. That's exciting.
So exciting!
Pictures of Mayim and I and the guests and extra clips go there if you want to check it out. Bialik Breakdown, at Bialik Breakdown. How do you spell Bialik? Bialik, because people don't know.
Well, we spell it a lot. But yeah, people are probably going to be saying, why isn't it called Mayim Bialik's Breakdown? It's too many words. So Jonathan just thought Bialik Breakdown.
And go to Instagram, follow us,
Yes.
and let us know what you think.
And if you follow me, I appreciate that. But this is different. This is following just podcast stuff. So it's like all mental health stuff, all what's happening on the podcast, me and Jonathan fun stuff. And yeah, it's my page was getting too convoluted because of me, not because of all you. Anyway, so we're going to be talking to Anthony Green.
Anthony Green came to us because his fans suggested that he come on the podcast, and then he tweeted at us, and that's how we're recruiting guests now. We're just, whoever tweets at us gets to come on.
Well, not exactly. But he likely is going to talk about a lot of things. He's going to talk about music and talk about substance abuse and a bit about his rehab experience. But he's also one of the only people that I know in our industry, meaning in the industry of being a public person, he's one of the only people I know who talks about being diagnosed bipolar.
A lot of our people who are following us on our new page have been messaging us, and a lot of requests have come in to cover bipolar and give more light. A lot of people, or I guess their complaint or their frustration is that it's so misunderstood and there's so much stigma around it. So this is excellent for you to come and help us understand it better.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about bipolar disorder. The reason I opened with that Jimi Hendrix quote, manic depression is a frustrating mess. It was a song that Jimi Hendrix wrote about manic depression. And it used to be called manic depression, but now it's not. Now it's called?
Bipolar.
It's called bipolar disorder. And there's a large-scale study of, I think, 11 countries that has an overall prevalence of bipolar disorder, the kind of spectrum, at about 2%. With bipolar 1 being about half of 1% and bipolar 2 being the other half. So what are the different kinds of bipolar disorders?
It's a good question.
So what do you think of when you think of bipolar disorder? Don't be mean.
Big fluctuations of mood.
Okay.
Like polar being on the other sides
Both
of
poles.
two things.
Great. So that is absolutely true. People who are like up and down, that doesn't mean you're bipolar. People who have big emotions, that doesn't mean you're bipolar. What are the ways that we generally diagnose
We talk about
things?
this with everything. Everyone's like, "Oh, I feel like this," and then they throw some
Right,
clinical
like,
diagnosis.
I think I'm manic depressive. No, just let's take it down a notch. What are the two ways that we generally, clinically,
How extreme it is.
Very good. He
and
listens.
How long it's happened over time. So it has the situation continued.
How long is it? Right. So the time course and then also the severity, meaning how much impact does it have on your daily life, your weekly life, your monthly life. So bipolar 1 is what a lot of people think about when they think about manic depression. And what that is, it is mania and depression. So you have to have both poles. And you have to have both poles in kind of a certain way, a certain duration of time. So bipolar 1 typically is manic episodes that last at least 7 days, or manic symptoms that are very, very severe, meaning need hospitalization.
Describe mania for us.
Mania is an elevation of mood that is persistent.
It's not excitement, people.
It's not excitement. Mania involves things like racing thoughts, pressured speech, and typically something like maxing out credit cards, staying up all night, making inappropriate sexual advances towards people to the point that you are engaging in sexual behavior that is very, very risky. And I don't want people to be like, I do risky things. Am I manic? No, it goes with all these other things when we talk about mania. And as someone who has experienced mania, that's right, folks, what it feels like is like a really bad time on speed, meaning your brain is operating faster than your mouth can keep up. And there's often a level of agitation because other people, like, they don't get it. Like, they're not on the same wavelength as you. And the difference between mania and something like being on speed or having a drug experience where you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing and no one else gets it, is that this doesn't end. This can persist for days and days. I have had experiences of getting very, very little sleep for many days in a row. It's not pleasant. So that's one pole of bipolar disorder. The other pole is depression. And usually there will be depression with what we call mixed features. It'll kind of fluctuate. I mean, it's a storm, you know, it really feels like a chemical storm. So that's bipolar 1. And Silver Lining Playbook, Silver Lining 1, plural. Anyway, that movie shows bipolar disorder. That's a thing. And often with mania, you'll get a lot of creativity. Very little need for sleep, often very little need for food, and often a real proliferation of creative energy. Bipolar 2 is characterized by depression that is often worse, meaning more often leads to attempts at suicide. And the mania is, quote, better or less severe. We call that hypomania. So maybe you'll have people staying up, many nights in a row with lack of, sleep and things like that, but they won't max out credit cards, or they won't, have indiscriminate, dangerous sexual activity with people, which many people would just define as dating these days. But it's here all week. Okay, maybe too soon. So that's bipolar 1. That's bipolar 2. There's also something called cyclothymia, which kind of means that like you have some of these symptoms, they're not severe enough to like merit.
What if you have like, you go up for like a few days, but then you don't have the horrible depression? Or what if you only have the horrible depression, but you don't go up?
Okay, great question. So if you're depressed and you're experiencing that kind of depression, you may just have something on the depression spectrum. And if you're just having the mania, you may only have something on the mania spectrum. In addition, people who are bipolar often self-medicate. Pot, very common. Alcohol, very common. So that's a basic little bit of structure to bipolar disorder. I'm going to let our guest see what level of comfort he has with describing bipolar disorder. My father of blessed memory was bipolar. I don't explicitly tremendously talk about it a lot because there are people who loved my father, who are in my family, who don't believe in that diagnosis. They don't. Not everybody has to. But I do have a tremendous amount of experience with mania, with depression. And I have experienced both mania and depression. There was a time in my life when that diagnosis really seemed to suit me. And then my mania really kind of dissipated and went other places and other directions. And I'm happy to talk more about that maybe in another episode, how I've learned to manage both my mania and my depression.
Did you identify any specific triggers that were going on in your life that you could sort of correlate with that level of experience that you had?
Almost every time that I had an episode, it was related to a romantic disappointment. And that's also not uncommon and very, very troubling because I don't believe that it means that people who are bipolar can't have, relationships. And there's a lot of stigma around people who are bipolar. And there's this notion like, being depressed is like, everybody's a little depressed. Like everybody's a little anxious, but like bipolar, that's crazy. And I really try not to use that word. And I try and teach my children and other people. No one really finds it interesting or appreciates how, fastidious I am about it. But I don't like when people call people crazy like that.
And were those episodes depressive episodes or were they manic episodes or both? Did they have have both?
Yeah, both. It's really bad because when you have mania like that, coming down is very hard, which is why a lot of people will use drugs to even it out.
That's where I was going was, why is it that so many people who have these fluctuations, these broad fluctuations, because we all have fluctuations, end up self-medicating? And it sounds like it is in order to try and stabilize.
This is all a spectrum, which is why it's like, sometimes I might seem like I fit this diagnosis, or like, what is that? And can you outgrow that diagnosis? And why couldn't my dad? Whatever. No, there's A, it's a spectrum. B, people who are bipolar, and in particular, mania makes you really not want to take the medication they want you to take. Because when you feel good, you feel really good. And you feel like, I've got this. Like, it's part of the system. It's like part of that disorder is that it tricks you into believing you've got this. So medication noncompliance, very, very difficult in bipolar disorder in particular. And you don't have any side effects of the medication, which some people do have side effects. And the medications in the old days for bipolar disorder were very, very heavy, very strong. Like you couldn't get pregnant on them. They were teratogenic. That's the word for medication you can't get pregnant on. Anyway, I'd really love to welcome Anthony and have him help us tackle all of these things and more. Anthony.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by BetterHelp.
If you're feeling depressed, if you're struggling with uncertainty, maybe you're having difficulty sleeping or meeting your goals, or you can't seem to get out of a rut of a certain kind of relationship, I think it might be time for BetterHelp. It's online professional counselors who can listen and help. They assess your needs and they match you with a licensed professional therapist who you can start communicating with in under 48 hours. There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. It's available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account and send messages to your counselor. You can schedule weekly video and phone sessions. You don't ever have to sit in a waiting room again. BetterHelp's committed to facilitating great matches. It's easy and free to change counselors if needed, which is so important. It's more affordable than offline counseling, and financial aid is available. So many people have been using BetterHelp that they have recruited additional counselors in all 50 states. Our podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and our listeners get 10% off their first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/break. That's betterhelp.com/break. Join the over 1 million people who've taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced BetterHelp professional.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Athletic Greens.
You know, there's a lot of stressors in pretty much all of our lives. Maybe busy schedules, I've got that, poor sleep, sometimes not getting enough exercise, just a crazy environment, or general stress. It can be hard to maintain effective nutritional habits, and that's where Athletic Greens comes in. It is an all-in-one superfood powder that is your nutritional essential. It is the easiest and most delicious nutritional habit that you can add to your daily routine. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition by giving you one thing with all the things. Why do I take it? Because Athletic Greens is not just a multivitamin substitute. It's a multivitamin, a multimineral, a probiotic, green superfood blend. It has 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. It fills the nutritional gaps in your diet and can also help with things like digestion and a healthy immune system. It is lifestyle friendly. It's keto, paleo, and vegan friendly. It's dairy free. It's gluten free. Whether you're looking for peak performance or better health, or you just want to cover all your nutritional bases, that's what Athletic Greens is for. Right now, they've got you. Year-round immune support. They are giving our audience a free 1-year supply of vitamin D plus 5 free travel packs. I love travel packs. With your first purchase. Visit our link today, athleticgreens.com/breakdown. That's athleticgreens.com/breakdown. Get your free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Ring.
Ring Alarm is protection and it's peace of mind. Two of the most important things that exist. It's a powerful, affordable home security system that you install yourself, and it works with other Ring products. It protects every corner of your home, inside and out, and it works together in one app. So you can keep an eye on your house from anywhere. This is like from the future, but it's now right from your, it sounds like if I tried to explain this to my mother, she'd be like, what? Yes. If something's happening at home, Ring lets you know. It is peace of mind anytime, knowing that your home's protected. Protect your home with Ring Alarm. We have a special offer for you. Go to ring.com/breakdown. It is the perfect way to start your Ring experience.
It is so easy that Mayim isn't even intimidated installing it.
No, I'm not. It's easy to install and it just works on that one app. Because my fear is like, what do I do and how do I do it? Very, very easy. Go to ring.com/breakdown for a special offer on a Ring Alarm security kit today. Can you build the system that's right for your home?
You sure can.
Can you have it up and running in minutes?
Minutes.
Where do they go?
Go to ring.com/breakdown. That's ring.com/breakdown.
We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I would like to note that you have very pretty eyes.
Thank you.
And the reason I mention is because I did a little bit of a dive. You have some very, very photogenic children.
Yeah.
And they have your eyes. Like, it's a thing. Whatever genes you have, they run very strong because your children also all look alike and a little bit like you cloned yourself.
They all look so similar. They have that thing, where you sometimes see it in a family.
Well, that's adorable. And also, you have the kids that I thought I'd have if I was cooler. Because, like, they're always, like, skateboarding. And, like, they've got, like, groovy long hair. And they wear, like, long shirts. They all wear Vans. And, like,
they're cool. They're
just
like cool
look
people. Like, I manufactured my own friends.
That's what I did, but mine are nerds.
I'm so lucky in that way where they're just all people I would want to hang with. People will sometimes say, like, what'd you do? It's like, we didn't really do anything. We sort of let them, we did force them to do what we wanted to do right out the gate. And I think that just made them, be like, all right, I gotta be cool here.
Completely not what we're supposed to speak about with Anthony Green.
This is a parenting podcast.
This is not a parenting podcast. So we're very excited to speak to you because you've been vocal about two things that we do talk about. One is sobriety, and I've been very open about my participation in 12-step programs, and many of our guests, do kind of talk about that stuff with me and with us. But the other thing is you've spoken about bipolar disorder, and this is something that people ask us about a lot. Not a lot of people like to talk about it. And as I talked about in the introduction to this episode, my father of blessed memory was bipolar. I've had years and years, mostly of depression, but also mania, which is pretty well controlled. I'm very familiar with a lot of the ins and outs, as it were, of bipolar disorder and and my father was not diagnosed for almost his entire life
Yeah.
and almost my entire life because there weren't names for things and it was not a thing. And anyway, so we're really eager and excited to talk to you. And also, you're a super awesome musician and you do a very beloved thing. You made an album of kids music, which I think is really awesome when like cool grown-ups do that. I'm a They Might Be Giants fan. And so obviously
Yes.
that's like a big part of a lot of people are like, I know their kids album. And it's like, well, there was years before that. But anyway, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about sort of what young Anthony was like. What was what kind of spirit were you as a child?
So I was the youngest in my family, and there was a considerable difference between the ages, like between me and my closest sibling. So they sort of had their little family clique all figured out, and I came in, a decade or so later as the youngest, and I think it was a kind of a surprise for everybody. And I had a really good childhood, the way my parents did their absolute best. Growing up in the suburbs, not really feeling ever like I could, like I belonged, not even necessarily anywhere, but even in my own family, and not to put anybody on the hot seat. This is not, anyone's fault here, a lot of circumstance. But I just never felt like I could belong anywhere. I felt like safe to be myself. I was different. My brothers were all great at sports, like just awesome at sports. And I'm sort of different in that way. I think I had more energy in like a psychotic way that my parents weren't used to. And they were also over-parenting at that point.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, do you mean they were like done with it or they were parenting too much, over-parenting?
They were done with it. That's what I should clarify. I think they kind of figured they were done having kids. And then
how many of you were there?
There was 4 boys.
Oh.
And there's like 10 years difference between me and my closest brother.
Surprise. Yes.
Yeah. And I was just I was a lot different from them, and they were the greatest brothers. They looked out for me, and they were all so different. But when they were running off doing things, I was still sort of the kid at home. And not to get into the crazy dynamics of my family, but it was a little bit difficult. My parents had stuff going on in their lives that I think made it difficult too. And I was, I had asthma when I was a kid. I was always sick. And then it evolved from there to like, okay, he's not playing sports. I liked music and poetry. I started doing drugs really early on, like as soon as I discovered alcohol. I was like, oh my God. And I was a kid. Like I was like, taking empties of like the parents and the kids, and drinking the stuff that was in the house and sort of like mimicking what I saw on TV. And I was also a large boy. I had asthma and I was on prednisone a lot when I was a kid for different infections. And from what I understand about that now is my eating both to feel good about, like just to feel good. My mom's Italian, so it was like, oh, you're getting picked on in school, like have some pizza, that sort of developed early on. So like I had an eating disorder like before I even started messing with drugs. Even like I remember being a big kid and wanting to lose weight and learning about eating disorders at school and being like, oh, I could lose weight doing that. Like that's how my brain worked. And my image of myself was really, really distorted. And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. So it manifested itself in behavior like eating disorder, drug abuse, drinking really young. And I was a fun kid. Like I wasn't like some
you
dark
sound like a hoot to
kid.
me.
But that stuff sucks. And I look back on my childhood and just my early adolescence from what I can remember, and I was doing the best to just want to fit in. I wanted to fit in so bad, like have friends, have people that I felt like a part of, like the gang with them, and I didn't find that anywhere. And I can remember kind of finding it in like the kind of drug culture, of a high school, where like I thought I was drawn to it. You know, it was sort of, I liked these musicians and poets that are sort of glorified getting drunk and doing things. So, and not really having any guidance. I took the slip and slide journey right into the most cliche stuff you could do. And I was lucky. I had a lot of support. Like, I had all the resources that anybody could dream of having. Like, my parents, you know, when I was at some point, I was like a freshman in college, and I said I needed to get help. That was the first time we'd ever really gotten on the journey of sobriety. Long story short, like, I came home one night and just was out of my mind. And they were like, you know, you're grounded, you're this, you're that. And I was like, that's great. I'm going to kill myself. So you can ground me. And I remember the look on their face in their kitchen, just like, what the fuck are we going to do? You know, and my oldest brother, I think they got him on the phone, and all my brothers were like, this is what you do. And I went to rehab, and that was my first stay at rehab. And that was the beginning of really learning about substance abuse, mental health, learning what was going on with me, and how I can identify it, how I could start to function in the world, be like who I wanted to be and not dress it up, you know, and really start to grow. Some people went to college. I went to rehab. That's how it went.
I'm really curious about that first experience at that age. Now all of a sudden you're getting a mirror put up to you, and people are saying, wait a second, there's another way to live.
I don't think I was quite ready for all of it. You know, I might have retained, 20% of the hardcore, knowledge that you would come out of that. But I remember getting out of rehab and having a conversation with my dad where he was like, this doesn't mean you never have to drink again. Even when I went in, I went in because I got caught and I was being destructive, but I wasn't yet at the point where I had become like physically addicted, where like I needed it, or I was going through an intense withdrawal, or I could have caught myself right then and there.
You said some really interesting things, a lot happens before you get caught, right? Or before you go to rehab, or before, and, what you described is sort of, being / feeling different. Sometimes we are different and we don't feel different, and sometimes we feel different and we're not different. But you had a lot of, kind of differences, and we're all the product of whatever we grew up in and around, and so, you described that. But I think that the food is actually very interesting to me, that you noticed a pattern with food, because as we talk about here, that loop, that circuit, that dopamine need, that reward system, like it is primed in your brain. It's not primed from the drug or the food. Like it's in here, And for some people it's gambling, and for some people it's sex. Like we are primed for pleasure and pursuit,
Even just this, like the hit you get when like, I'm going to see if someone said something nice about a comment.
For some brains, it doesn't get satisfied, and we will keep pushing, keep looking, keep finding. And what you described, I'm always very interested, because I don't have the spiritual allergy to alcohol, meaning I can drink.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to feel like a better version of myself when I've had a drink and a half. And I totally get, like, I've read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I get it. There but for the grace of God go I, meaning that's not my thing, but it really pains me, to think about what that must be like to feel that that's the solution, that that's the way to be you, is that you can't do it sober, and it's like, it's like we say, the problem's not alcohol, the problem is sobriety. The drinking's not the problem. It's the thing that makes you think that the only way to exist is to drink that is the problem. So I'm curious if you can maybe say a little bit more. I mean, especially when you're a teenager and everything's insane anyway.
I didn't get that. I didn't really get that. Okay, the big problem here is like in how I'm processing my stressors, what I'm doing with the things that are making me ashamed or embarrassed.
Right.
What I'm doing with the things that I don't like about myself. and how I'm dealing with that. And honestly, what you said, when I start thinking like about education, like if we made that like a mandatory thing where we like helped kids walk through like identity, why they like the things they like, what it means to them, and what it, like give the sense of like being in this world is like not just to a means to an end to like get, it's not to get the good grade. It's really to like connect with people and to have good friendships. Like imagine if that was a thing that was like at the forefront, just like math and just like reading, like, hey, making true connections, understanding yourself. Like feel like I would have been way less fucked up.
Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by Babbel.
When you're traveling somewhere where you don't know the language, it can be really challenging to accomplish even the simplest of tasks. Namely, where's the bathroom? I need it now. Thankfully, there's Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app. Through Babbel's bite-sized lessons, you learn new language skills that you can actually use in the real world. From greetings, menus, and directions to gaining a deeper understanding of the culture, Babbel is a travel essential. Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. And as a neuroscientist, I can say that's the best way to do it. Little lessons, good repetition. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 actual language experts. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective. You can choose from 14 different languages: Spanish, French, Italian, German. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your pronunciation and accent, which can make a huge difference. There are so many ways to learn with Babbel. In addition to lessons, you can get podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even live classes. Start your new language learning journey today with Babbel.
Right now, when you purchase 3 months of a Babbel subscription, you get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Go to Babbel.com and use promo code BREAK. That's BABBEL.com/break. Babbel, language for life. Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by Go Henry.
We love Go Henry. Saving money, managing money, these are very important skills to learn. And I remember my parents mainly teaching me about money by saying, we can't afford that. But teaching kids to be responsible with money doesn't have to be tough or make them cry. Go Henry makes it easy to teach kids a lifetime of financial skills. It's very important not only to teach kids about saving money and making money, but building financial independence, setting them up for the future, teaching them the difference between wants and needs, and teaching them about the importance of giving. Helping your kids be financially literate makes a huge difference in their future, and Go Henry can help. Go Henry makes money management easier as a parent, empowering for your kid. It is so exciting to be able to do this with your child and show them that money's not something to be afraid of, and it's also not something to use as an idol. It's something that can be a tool in your life, and there are many ways to have financial literacy so that your child can understand it that way. Go Henry also has debit cards for kids and an app for parents, which is an easy, fun way to teach kids good money habits. It's designed to help people ages 6 to 18 learn about money and build financial independence. And it's easier for parents. You don't have to handle cash, and it teaches boundary setting and flexibility. There's real-time money transfers, automated allowance deposits, and tasks that allow your kids to earn extra money for completing chores. You can set spending limits and control where the card can be used.
Get started at GoHenry.com and get 1 month free with promo code BREAK. That's 1 month free at GoHenry.com, promo code BREAK.
That kind of leads to my next question because, there's a lot of overlap with what's called dual diagnosis. People who, live with mental health challenges and also have addiction issues. And what I was explaining, in the introduction, I was talking about how, especially with bipolar disorder, it is very, very common to have dual diagnosis because and it really bugs me, and I don't know if you've listened to our podcast, it really bugs me when people use terms incorrectly, meaning when people are like, I like my shoes neat, I'm OCD. It's like, no.
I'm
or
aware.
like, I get depressed sometimes, I'm bipolar. No. So what I was talking about, and I don't know if you can speak to this, I'm wondering if you were aware of kind of notions of mood, because it's so normal when you're a teenager to be moody. And testosterone in particular, which tends to be the hormone of people who are assigned male at birth, it can have a lot of aggression to it. It can have a lot of complexity in those teenage years, and girls have their own. Sorry, assigned females at birth have their own as well. But could you in any way tell differences in mood that felt better when you were drunk or high? Or was it kind of just like, this is how I roll, this is how I party, and then one day someone said, we think you have a mood disorder?
It was more or less that I never really had a problem being social. I feel like I was like, because I was around my older brothers growing up, like I could kind of ham it up a little bit, but it was kind of, I could put on an act a little bit, and I was always kind of trying to fight for attention. And I think that when I would drink, I noticed that I would just feel at ease. And I can't necessarily say it was like an at ease to help me be social. But I think it, having like a hardcore issue with myself, be it like because of how I look or because of how I feel about myself or all of those things, when that tension is tweaked a little bit, and you're hiding it from everybody, you're hiding that fear and that shame and that anxiety from everybody. So when you feel it tweaked a little bit, whether it's whatever finds you, whether it's booze or the shopping or even just like, whatever, then I feel like I started going toward it, whatever. And I had a lot of people that I looked up to that I feel like, were drinkers, like I would, or drug addicts, like musicians, where you think like, oh, and you want their story to be the story of like, hey, don't do this shit. But more often than not, I feel like, at least in our time growing up, you still had this sense of like, oh man, there's this like mystery.
It was
and
a very
like,
melancholic.
Jim Morrison was this, and it's like, yo, he was actually pretty horrible to the people around him and abusive. And if you really want to be a great poet like that, a great human being like that, it's not the going to get wasted, drunk, and pushing excess and doing that shit. And it's not the way to do it.
It's funny because I like a lot of young people who went to Jewish camp. We used to sing James Taylor songs, like you got a friend, like whatever. I've seen fire. I can sing them all. And the thing that I most remember about James Taylor, besides like being at, Jewish camp and singing those songs, was that whenever music of his would come on the radio, my mother would say, such a shame he was a junkie.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at the time, I was a very little kid and I was like, I didn't even know what a junkie meant like at that time. But I remember it was like, it was ingrained in me. Like, it doesn't matter how pretty your voice is, like he had trouble. And it wasn't like she was saying he's a bad person. It was just like, and I remember that about a lot of musicians, and I remember, Hendrix and Jim Morrison, like all these names, and Janis Joplin. And it was like, and it has continued. And then, my era is Kurt Cobain. It was devastating, It's funny because I don't want my kids to feel that those people were not suffering, because that really is what I think was missing from the way my mother talked about it, But it's a salient and difficult point that many of the people, I think you're maybe younger than me, but many of the people we grew up listening to, though, many had tremendous problems, and part of that was the culture of the 80s and the culture of the 90s. I did want to ask, you were originally misdiagnosed, correct? Was that your first, when did that happen? Was that the first time you went to rehab?
So no, this was, I had the band, we had my wife and I had gone through a miscarriage or two miscarriages. And I was self-medicating all up and down the board. I had been in rehab at least twice at that point. But I went to the crisis center in Doylestown and ended up speaking with somebody there. And I was so fucked up.
What were you on? Just because I think it's helpful. I'm not trying to...
I was taking Oxycontin.
Okay.
I was taking probably Percocet. Whatever opiate I could get my hand on. It was also
opiates,
Klonopin or Xanax. I don't remember exactly, but it was those. so much marijuana. Not like,
Sorry. It's
not
just funny
like-
the way you said it so much.
Well, because I think it's important to make a distinction, because I don't think like in and of itself, marijuana is a harmful thing. I think anything, if you were to wake up in the morning and drink coffee all day long, I would be worried about you. Same thing as marijuana, and I think it can be overdone and can really, it can, in it by itself could make somebody seem like they're totally psychotic. And so,
Well, it is that's actually the class of drug.
I
it
went
is.
in, I was expressing what was going on with me. And I think with that information, they looked at me and they thought, you're hearing voices telling you to do things outside yourself,
Okay, so important sidebar. You can hallucinate from marijuana alone. It is a thing. Auditory hallucinations. Some people do have visual hallucinations, but it is a class of drug that you can have hallucinations. And so you were given someone threw out the word schizophrenia, which is a very, I will say it's very different from being bipolar. However, here's a fun thing about people who are bipolar. You can have delusions of grandeur, and you can have a completely psychotic perception on the universe as part, of your bipolar diagnosis that can look psychotic in the sense that you might actually get a schizophrenia diagnosis. So it's a much more nuanced diagnosis, process that needs to go on, obviously, than what you experienced. When were you given kind of that label of bipolar?
So it was a little bit after that. And when I had completely rejected the idea that I decided that they were wrong. And I had other people that were like, I don't know if that's really the case. And I had seen a few therapists. And at some point I met this therapist from my town, and they really helped me wrestle with accepting that I was bipolar. I knew, I felt it in just learning about it and talking to other people that had the diagnosis. And there was also, I hadn't gone through long periods of time where I wasn't, on some kind of substance. So I was like checking just to make sure. And it really just, it was relieving in the way where I was like, okay, now I feel like there's a criteria and a whole list of tools and a whole bunch of things we can do. But I felt a tremendous shame about it.
Yes.
And I was terrified of it. I felt like to most of the people in my life that I cared about and that were important in my life, that it made me seem crazy. Even now with people in my life, let's say I'm hurt by something and I want to communicate like, hey, this is hurtful for me. And I had a experience where this is my feeling about it. Sometimes there are people that will be like, well, you have this problem.
Oh, God.
So it's possible that you're making this out to be something that, or just they use that.
It's used as a weapon against you.
Yeah. And so that was something that I was so scared about. And now, even now in my life, I still have a fear about it. And it still happens once in a while with people I love and that I need in my life and that I function with all the time.
As someone who has experienced mania, I'm your friend in this. Was your mania what's classified as hypomania, or did you have extreme mania? Were you the kind of person that, I don't want to say acted out because that feels like the wrong way to say it. What does your mania look like, as much as you'd like to share? Does it involve doing things that you really, really shouldn't do that are possibly illegal and get you into financial, personal, and sexual trouble?
There's a little piece of that in there.
Okay.
But not as much as you'd think. My mania can look like workaholism.
Okay, so that could be more like the hypomania, which is more of the bipolar too. But one of the things that I find frustrating, and I actually find it much easier to, I don't want to say control my mania, but I can identify my mania quicker and I have tools that work better to help me move through it. Whereas the depression is, it is a much, much more difficult slog. But for mania, I'm curious, a lot of times I'll feel excitement and I sometimes wonder, well, have they taught me that I don't even know what excitement is?
Is this not allowed?
Can't I just be in a good mood? So what's your experience with mania?
I just take it. I take it. And I remember it's dangerous. It is dangerous when you get into that cycle of like something feels so good, or like, oh my God, this is the best song I've ever written. I've learned how to identify healthy, work-related, this is going to be productive. And I can keep that in check too, where I'm like, hey, as much as I am excited about this, I need to stay fluid in the sense that if somebody has a better idea, if I can't make it here on time, or if this needs to change, it can change. I also can get like, all right, I'm going to do this project. I'm going to start an album. It's going to be this. It can be very grandiose, but my mania, it kind of hides a little bit. And sometimes, like in a way where, because of my job and because I love to work so much, it can just sneak in there, and I can be overworking and overdoing it and making too much and not spending enough time. And it's hard to get off that track because I end up feeling like, well, this is my job and this is what I have to do. I love music and I get so wrapped up in it, and I get so wrapped up in the different things about it, and it can sneak up on me. So knowing that, I can look at this, be like, is this healthy for me? Create some kind of boundaries, and if I'm struggling, where I'm like, all right, I'm going home and I'm going to put everybody to bed and I'm going to hang out, and I'm going to be with them, and I can't, then I can also deal with that, where I'm having a hard time decompressing. I'm telling you, having people know and having the ability to talk about it really helps so much, aside from medication, therapy, but just having this awareness of it that I didn't have growing up, that our kids are going to have, so when they're like, ugh, like, we can talk about it, we can write about it, we can do what we need to do in order to get on with our life and make sure that we're making the healthy decision, because on the flip side of it, and honestly, sometimes it's a spiral going down to the opposite end. And sometimes for me, I just flip. Something happens, I hear something, I feel something. I hate using the word triggered, but like something, and I can hallucinate, that I can get into a dark place where you feel like the wanting to get away from the problem and wanting to escape the pain that you're feeling, like collides with like this hallucination that everyone in your life would be better off without you.
Yeah. There's so much conversation, even about sort of like, even like when people colloquially are like, oh my God, I wanted to kill myself. And like, I'm even persnickety because like, I hate when people, use that expression. And also we have a suicide epidemic. The notion of depression, a lot of people have more access to it because I think, when we experience grief or loss, or when our parents get divorced, or, things, or when we get divorced, those are times that we can have access to depression, and so a lot of people really don't understand mania because like they've never experienced that, right? But depression, they think they get, but in some ways I feel like that's actually worse because people think they get all kinds of depression because they've been sad, and the kind of depression that, that people who are bipolar experience and that people who have major depressive disorder experience, it's a different classification.
Yes.
And it's often based on its persistence. It's based on how much it impacts your life. And I think one of the other things is like, sometimes people will be like, my life is amazing and I have a great partner and I love all my friends and I love my dog. I'm just so depressed. Right. When you are depressed, there's not like, and I don't mean to be like, you don't get to say you're depressed, but I'm just that jerk right now.
I love that you're saying that because I feel this so often, but then I also have this guilt, like about feeling that, like this disenfranchised guilt.
That's something important, that when my depression was the worst, it was in the absence of quote, anything being objectively problematic or wrong, meaning I didn't need a crisis to feel like maybe this is not what God intended for me, i.e. to be alive, And that's it is the darkest place.
It is.
And it is the darkest corner of the darkest part of your brain and your soul when you are in that space. And, that is often when we like to point out to people, sometimes you need medication
Yeah,
to
yeah.
not be in that space, so you can look back at that space and say, oh, what are the things I can do so that I don't get there again? And a lot of people are afraid of medication, and I totally feel like that's legitimate because there's a lot of scary things about medication. It's overprescribed. We have a society that just wants to like fix it.
And like doctors are great. There's so many great doctors, but there's also doctors that don't give a shit. It's like there's so much. It's very difficult, and we don't have patience with one another too. Like it's like, I don't know. It's very difficult.
Yeah. So first of all, I think you're one of the bravest people that we've spoken to, hands down.
I can't accept that. I won't accept that, honestly, because I've had it easy. I've had it easy.
No. Okay. Hold on 1 second.
I had it so easy. My family had money. They had money from their family. Like when I needed help, even though my parents couldn't handle things emotionally, they couldn't give me what I needed emotionally. You know what I mean? When I needed shit, they were like, whatever, I'll pay for this. They could do that. Matt, I'm just saying, I was in a situation where I was so fortunate, like privileged out the ass to be able to know now the things that I know. And to see the behaviors of myself. Like some people, their family situation could never do that. And my family situation like accidentally did it. But it's like, oh man. And I've just been so fortunate. Like I boosted up being white, being a dude, being from where I'm from. Like, so I don't want to, there's a lot way more brave people out there, like actual brave people, and I am doing the best with what I can. And I'm proud to say that I'm doing the best with what I can. But I just feel like during this time, it'd be hard for me to be like, I'm so brave because I really had it so easy.
But let me finish my thought. What I was going to say is that it's really brave to talk publicly about something that a lot of people don't understand and that a lot of people tease.
That makes me happy. I'm lucky in that way too, because I have this cool job and I can't, it's like, when you see the other kid pee your pants and you can be like, well, the cool kid peed his pants. Like, I feel like fortunate that have people listening to my band and the people being like, you're good at this. So I have really this awesome ability to be like, check it out. Here's some real shit that's going on.
Well, and also I think that, being honest about your story and your journey is very important because a lot of people hear this like, like I had trouble and then I got better and my life is great, and I think that can be helpful for some people. But I think what Jonathan and I really appreciate and, the kind of people that we love to talk to are people who are still figuring it out, and it's like, I live one day at a time, like I don't think I've said anything to you today that made you mad, but I said a lot of things yesterday, and today I was like, just 1 hour at a time. Well, he was like joking with something and I really wanted to say something snarky, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to breathe through this. And then I don't say something stupid and I don't feel like a jerk because my feelings got hurt because I'm the most important person in the universe. So it's like, I love that you're very like, you're still figuring it out, I
got to send you this song that what you said, I wrote it. It's on a new album that's coming out. It's not out yet, but I've been playing it and like to work it out. And the song's called I Don't Want to Die Tonight. And the lyric in the song is, tonight I don't want to die, but tomorrow I might. And it was from an NA meeting, a Narcotics Anonymous meeting where my sponsor said, right now I'm going to be good. Like, I don't know, hit me up tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow we'll go get high. And I was like, damn, I finally actually got the one day at a time, one moment at a time thing. I think for years I had just heard it as a, one step at a time, but it really, really hit me.
I was in a meeting the other day and the topic was like, what's something that like recently clicked? And that's one of those for me that recently like really did, like we only get to do today. And of course you have to think about things, you have to plan things. But in terms of like, was I an asshole today? When I lay my head down on the pillow, like, what did I do today that's the person I want to be? And what did I do today that's the person that I don't want to be? And what are the things that I can plan to do so that those things align better? So that I do less of the things that I don't want to do and more of the things that I do. and that notion also that like whatever you feed is what grows, right? There's I think it's an indigenous story, the two wolves, right? Which one is going to win? It's the one that you feed, and the more you feed, I'm not talking about positivity like that. I'd be the last person to talk about positivity.
Because that's false. I feel like that's like a false antidote. I think it's just a constant reminder that every single thing that's annoying you is a lesson, and every single person needs compassion. You know what I mean? It's like it's a cycle. It's forgetting that and being annoyed by shit, and then remembering that and having.
And
that,
I can only remember it one day at a time.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and then knowing that you're gonna fuck up. Positivity is this fake thing, but when you have real shit, like the real joy or that real understanding, almost like that notion of like, this is gonna be tough. Let's love it. Let's figure out how we love it. Let's learn from it. Like,
you're in the middle of a miracle. That's what they tell you. You're just in the middle of a miracle.
Really breathing into that and starting to look around and being like, am I like trying to attain something, or is this something that I can actually experience without having to like, get somewhere or like have a byproduct? I feel like I'm always in this cycle of like, once I get 1 year clean, once I get this clean, once I do that, then everything's cool. But really it's like, once you become at peace with what's happening right now, whatever discomfort, shame, joy, whatever you're feeling right now, then you're free. And it's real good shit. It's not like it's not like the Instagram shit. It's that real shit. It'll make you cry shit.
That's a beautiful soundbite right there.
He's a beautiful soundbite.
You're making me so happy right now. I was nervous about this going on here because you're so smart and funny, and I was like, I'm gonna fuck this up so bad. Like my music's irrelevant, I'm irrelevant, whatever.
Oh my, no.
It really is a cool thing to have the thing, your mental health issue or my bipolar or that stuff that could really flatten me, like be a thing that I can actually use to help me make better connections with people, make writing songs better, performing songs better, like waking up. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard waking up in the morning, and when your defect is also the thing that you're like, is kind of helping you out in a way, it's a hack.
We talk a lot about mental health, but this is all an experience on a massive spectrum, and the label of normal was applied a long time ago to fit a very narrow box, and a huge segment of the normal experience was excluded and given labels. And the reality is we weren't taught any of this in terms of, oh, wait a second, these are signposts to recognize that if I'm going to spiral way up, I might drop really low, and how do I deal with that if I'm in those situations versus there's something wrong with me for experiencing that range. The ability of so many artists to experience a wider range of that experience.
Oh yeah.
That brings an enormous amount of magic into the world.
Yeah, but I, as someone who also is an artist and really can lean very heavily into both my mania and my depression as an artist, I can also say that unchecked and in isolation, it's for me, it is very, very dangerous. And so part of what I've been grateful for is the guidance of trained professionals who have helped me know the borders and boundaries of it, so that I know, oh, time to pull out my workbook. Oh, time to do this. Or, oh, I'm having tachycardia. Like my heart is racing and so is my brain and my mouth.
Like the light on your dashboard goes on.
It's like, hey, wait a second. Oh, I need to flag this.
And also I want to also just mention that, you mentioned you've been very, very positive, about a lot of aspects, but there's a lot of things about being on medication that is very, very distasteful, especially for people who experience mania and depression, because I'm very, very productive if you let me not be on medication.
Right?
I can be very
Get some shit done.
productive, and you take it away from me.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about, Anthony, is like, how did changing your relationship to some of the highs and lows impact your creativity? And did you ever worry that adjusting that or finding those flag posts or signposts and trying to, adjust either the highs or lows would impact you creatively?
I did. When I was younger, and still going through all those phases. I'm saying 24, 25, still thinking that like Jim Morrison was this cool guy, you know what I mean? Like this elevated figure. And just when my head hadn't really sunk in what was going on with me, I didn't really believe in myself anyway. So I didn't have this like, oh, I can be an artist and I belong to be an artist and I'm okay. I was still figuring that out. So anything that kept me going was just getting used for it. And then at some point during like an introspective moment, I really got this feeling. Maybe actually at some point I was writing something and I really clicked to me that spiritually I'm more connected to everything when I'm feeling everything. And with the medication, with bipolar stuff, I mean, you guys know it's sometimes finding out what works the best for you. And I went through a long time of trying different things where it was a nightmare. And so having something where, you know, I definitely feel like I'm balanced, but I also am experiencing the spectrum of human emotion just like anyone else. It's a little bit easier for me to hold on to, the middle ground when I'm starting to fly in either direction, you know, which actually when I'm focusing on that being the goal makes me happy or makes me feel joy, you know, because I'm like, this is some real shit. And it doesn't need to like be a euphoric thing. And it also doesn't need to mean I'm like, you know, worthless. It's real.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Something happened where I was writing when I was sober, completely sober. I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. Spiritually, I'm meant to be right here when I'm doing this. And not that I haven't written things on drugs or drunk or in different times that weren't amazing and that I do think were great, but it's not really worth it to get there sometimes. Like it's, you know, I just can't make that mistake. You know what I mean? I could never see it as a thing where I was like, I need to get high to do this. Like it seems like it all is like it like takes away my life force.
But that's why we keep coming back, because we only can hold that one day at a time, meaning all of us, we can only hold that one day at a time. And exactly what you said is what we need to be reminded of every single day. Is it worth the risk? I've seen people lose their spouses, their children, their home, their life, you know, for a hit.
So I just lost my brother-in-law. So my wife's sister had a husband who has four kids. You know, has been struggling a lot throughout the year, and then made a choice, and then just won. And it's I'm still fucked up from it, and you know. I just said that, but I just felt like I was in this conversation where I didn't mean to just be like, it's still very difficult for everyone, you know, my whole family and you know, it's just so hard to deal with that, you know, and you want people that are in the situation that can hear it to know that there is hope. There is hope. There is a new way. There's a new chance. There's a new beginning. Like, and if you're alive and you're listening, there's a chance for change. That's it. You know, you don't need to keep going on this path that you're on, you know, and I hope more than anything, if there's an echo of my existence in this world at all, it's to let somebody know that, yeah, you're here. We're both like this. And, you know, we can help each other. Like, check this out, you know, like is to remind somebody that they're not alone in this, you know. That's why doing stuff like this is so cool. And just being able to bring light to things like this, because you just know that people look up to both of you, and people that are listening out there, they come to stuff like this because, you know, they need to hear it. They need to hear that people are out there waking up every day, you know, making the decision for life and making the decision for love every day. It's tough. It's hard. You know, it's alienating. It makes you feel terribly alone sometimes, but that people are doing it, and that it's possible, you know. Just know that it's possible.
Anthony, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us. I feel inspired by him.
That was one of the most beautiful
It's beautiful.
tributes and call outs. If you are alive and listening, there is hope.
Take it from the marginally successful singer-songwriter guy you probably have never heard of. But life is so good.
Thank you. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
I love you guys. Thanks for this.
Oh,
This was
thanks.
a really invigorating conversation.
Well, we're here whenever you need us.
I think this is the first guest who's made me cry. This is
Oh my goodness. I make you cry all the time.
I had some tears.
life is difficult. It's also amazing in many, many ways. But people come up or they face struggle. They don't know what to do with it. They haven't been taught how to have the tools often. They're looking for any type of direction, and for him to reach out like that, and just his quote was so powerful. If you're alive and listening, there's hope. And he's obviously experienced so much, both on both ends of that experience spectrum. It just really touched me.
He articulated really well some very complicated concepts of the emotional experience. His description of what medication does, I thought was very, very, accurate, but just so eloquent.
The keeping you in the middle?
Well, and just that notion that, like, he gets to experience the full range of emotion, because that's what people say, like, it dampens you, but I think that's really important, especially for people who are afraid of medication. If someone who is so prolific and so creative and literally has to live in that creative space where you need to experience so much, he's able to do it and also manage his mood. Like, that's amazing.
I think some people consider that, like, you need substances, you need altered states of emotional consciousness or emotional experience to achieve that artistic output. And what he said about how it takes away part of his life force in order to, it's like a trade.
And everybody has a different sense of what's worth it, and that's, I can't make everybody's sense my sense, like, it's very hard to stay sober, forget about the mental health stuff. Like, it's very, very hard to stay sober. And, he said an interesting thing, like when he went the first time, he didn't have that consciousness of like, I'm an addict, I need it to wake up. It was just like, this is how he was living his life. Like, what's the problem? And I got caught, right? He wasn't ready.
I keep going back to the creativity component. I see creativity as you are accessing other realms of your brain, of creativity, of...
Well, and the way that I see it is that I do believe that some people are addicts and some people are not, meaning some people suffer from the disease of alcoholism and some people do not. And I also believe that there are some people for whom they can and do partake in substances that relieve inhibition, that make certain aspects of consciousness flow differently. And those people can choose to partake as they want to. And then there are some people, and I believe Anthony is one of those people, for whom that door is no longer an option. It's just no longer an option for him. And so his challenge, his task is to still be himself and to still be an artist and to still do all those things. And yeah, probably would be fun, good, like fill in whatever adjective, right? But it's not an option for him anymore. So the rest of his life is his option.
I agree.
We agree.
I want to mention that there are resources available. We, of course, try and destigmatize and share a lot of information here. But if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts or need help, please reach out to the Suicide Prevention Hotline. It's going to be on the video below. If you're listening in audio only, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255.
A lot of the reason that people are nervous to call hotlines is because sometimes you think like, oh, I'll get over it. It's not really bad enough. They'll think I'm stupid, or they'll think that I shouldn't have called. It is 100% the job of the licensed and skilled people who receive calls to deal with a full range of people's experience on the depression and suicidal ideation spectrum. There is no thought too small to not call.
You can ask Mayim anything at bialikbreakdown.com. That's BIALIK. Breakdown.com. There's a little, on the main page there's a little form. And follow the new Instagram page at Bialik Breakdown. on Instagram. You'll find more of us. You'll find little quotes.
We're going to put all of Anthony's quotes. I think he's the new host of this show. I should have him co-host with me.
She's already looking for my replacement, people.
From our breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, and now she's gonna break down